The attorney's voice echoed through the quiet courtroom as he read my mother's will. I hereby bequeath my entire estate, including the family home, all financial assets, and personal property, to my daughter Chloe Marie Harrison. My heart stopped. I looked up from my trembling hands, certain I'd misheard. Around me, family members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. My sister Chloe sat beside our father, her face carefully neutral, but I caught the hint of a satisfied smile at the corner of her mouth. "What about Kaitlyn?" someone whispered behind me. The attorney continued reading, detailing property descriptions and account numbers, but my name never appeared. Not once. My mother had left me nothing. 43 years of being her daughter, and I'd been erased from her final wishes as if I'd never existed. I'd spent the last 3 years caring for her after her stroke. I'd moved back home, put my career on hold, managed her medications, drove her to appointments, sat with her during the lonely nights when she couldn't sleep. Chloe had visited twice. But Chloe was getting everything. The attorney finished reading and closed the folder. "Are there any questions?" I stood up, my legs shaking. "There has to be a mistake." Chloe finally looked at me. "There's no mistake, Kaitlyn." Mom knew what she was doing. The memory hit me as I drove home from the courthouse, my hands gripping the steering wheel too tightly. Chloe's 30th birthday party, 5 years ago. Mom had thrown an elaborate celebration at the country club, inviting everyone we knew. I'd arrived early to help set up, as always. I'd arranged flowers, organized the gift table, coordinated with the caterers. When guests arrived, Mom had pulled Chloe to the center of the room. "I want everyone to know how proud I am of my daughter," Mom had announced, her arm around Chloe. "She's accomplished so much. Doctor, philanthropist, everything I ever dreamed of." I'd stood in the corner, holding a tray of appetizers I'd assembled, watching people congratulate Chloe. When someone asked if I was the catering staff, Mom had laughed and said, "No, that's my other daughter. Kaitlyn, come say hello." My other daughter. Like I was an afterthought. That night, after everyone left, I'd stayed to clean up. Chloe had gone home early, exhausted from all the attention. Dad had already left. Mom sat in a chair, watching me gather empty glasses. "Chloe's special," she'd said. "You understand that, don't you? She needs more support than you do. You've always been so independent." Independent. That was her word for overlooked. I sat in my apartment that evening, surrounded by boxes I'd never fully unpacked after moving out of Mom's house. 3 years of my life, caring for her daily, and this was my reward. Nothing. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through photos. There was Chloe at her medical school graduation, Mom beaming beside her. Chloe's wedding, where Mom had cried tears of joy. Chloe's promotion announcement, where Mom had hosted another celebration. I kept scrolling. There were fewer photos of my milestones. My college graduation, where Mom had complained about the heat the entire time. My master's degree ceremony, which she'd missed entirely because Chloe had a dinner that same evening. My job promotion, which she'd acknowledged with a text message, "That's nice, dear." I found old letters Mom had written over the years. Most were to Chloe, filled with encouragement and praise. The few addressed to me were brief, often correcting something I'd done or reminding me of family obligations I'd supposedly neglected. In one letter, written when I was 25, she'd outlined how Chloe was the future of the family and how I needed to support your sister's success. I'd always been the supporting actor in Chloe's story. Even in death, Mom had made sure that continued. I called my father the next morning, needing to understand. He answered on the 4th ring, his voice tired. "Kaitlyn, I figured you'd call." "Dad, did you know about the will?" Long pause. "Your mother made her own decisions." "That's not an answer." "Did you know she was leaving everything to Chloe?" "Chloe is better suited for the responsibility," he said finally. "The estate, the investments, managing everything. You know how your mother felt about these things. I spent 3 years taking care of her. I gave up my career, my life. And Chloe spent years building a medical practice and contributing to the family's reputation. Your mother was proud of that." His voice was firm, dismissive. "You need to accept this, Kaitlyn. The will is final. You could have said something. You could have encouraged her to be fair. Fair? He laughed, a bitter sound. Life isn't fair. Your sister worked hard for her success. Maybe if you'd focused more on achieving something significant instead of playing caretaker, things would be different. I hung up before I said something I'd regret. My father had always been distant, but this was cruel. He'd watched Mom favor Chloe for decades and never once intervened. Now he was defending it. I was completely alone. The law office of Bennett and Associates was located in a renovated building downtown. I'd made the appointment 3 days after the will reading, researching attorneys who specialized in estate disputes. Harold Bennett was in his 60s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner. He listened as I explained the situation, taking notes occasionally. Your mother left everything to your sister, despite you being the primary caregiver for years, he summarized. And you received nothing. Nothing. Not even a personal item. It's like I didn't exist. Do you have documentation of the care you provided? I pulled out a folder. Medical records showing I was her healthcare proxy. Receipts for medications I purchased. A letter from her doctor thanking me for my dedication. Photos showing me at the house daily. Harold reviewed the documents carefully. This could be a case of undue influence. If your sister manipulated your mother into changing the will. I don't know if that happened. But it's suspicious. Mom's will was changed 8 months ago, right after Chloe visited for a weekend. Before that, the estate was split evenly between us. Harold looked up. Do you have a copy of the previous will? Mom's attorney provided it when I requested the full file. Said it's standard procedure in contested cases. Smart thinking. Harold leaned back. I'll be honest, Kaitlyn. Estate disputes are difficult and expensive. There's no guarantee we'll win. Are you prepared for that fight? I'm prepared to fight for what's right, even if it means going against my own family. 2 weeks after the will reading, I drove past Mom's house, my childhood home. Chloe's car was in the driveway, along with a moving truck. I parked down the street and watched. Movers carried furniture out of the house. Not just any furniture. Mom's antique dining set, the one that had been in our family for 3 generations. The grandfather clock from the hallway. The art collection Mom had spent decades curating. Chloe emerged from the house, directing the movers. She was selling everything, turning our family history into cash without a second thought. I felt sick watching her treat our memories like commodities. That dining table was where we'd eaten every holiday meal. The grandfather clock had been my grandmother's most prized possession. The paintings had been collected during family trips I barely remembered, but Mom had cherished. My phone buzzed. A text from Chloe, taking care of the estate. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Like she was doing me a favor by erasing our family history. I took photos of everything being loaded onto the truck. Harold had said documentation was crucial. Every action Chloe took, every decision she made, could be evidence later. I watched until the truck pulled away, carrying pieces of my childhood to auction houses and antique dealers. The breakthrough came 3 weeks into my investigation. I'd spent hours combing through Mom's financial records, which Harold had subpoenaed as part of the legal proceedings. There, buried in bank statements from 6 years ago, was a transfer I'd never known about. $50,000 moved from Mom's primary account to a new account with both Mom and Chloe's names on it. More transfers followed over the years. Small amounts at first, then larger sums. By the time of Mom's death, Chloe had funneled nearly $200,000 into joint accounts that Dad and I had never known existed. Harold studied the records with growing interest. This changes everything. Your sister has been systematically moving assets for years. This could demonstrate a pattern of undue influence. Can we prove Mom didn't authorize these transfers? We can question the timing and secrecy. Why hide joint accounts from family? Why make transfers in amounts just below reporting thresholds? He tapped the papers. This looks like someone who knew exactly what they were doing. I thought about Chloe's frequent visits in the years before Mom's stroke. Visits I'd thought were daughterly concern. Now they looked like something else entirely. There's more, I said, pulling out another folder. Chloe paid for a lawyer to visit Mom 8 months ago. The same month the will was changed. Harold smiled grimly. Now we're getting somewhere. I hadn't planned to eavesdrop. I'd gone to Dad's house to drop off some of Mom's medical records Harold needed, thinking no one was home. But as I approached the front door, I heard voices from the open window. She's actually fighting this? Chloe's voice, incredulous. Kaitlyn's delusional if she thinks she has a case. Your sister is upset, Dad replied. She'll calm down eventually. Upset? Chloe laughed. She's pathetic. She spent years playing nurse, thinking that would earn her something. But Mom always knew I was the one who deserved the estate. I'm the one who made something of myself. Kaitlyn worked hard too, Dad said, though his tone was half-hearted. Working hard at what? A mediocre career she gave up? At least I brought prestige to the family. Dr. Chloe Harrison. That means something. Kaitlyn's just. Kaitlyn. I stood frozen outside the window, my hand raised to knock. The cruelty in my sister's voice was staggering. We'd never been close, but I'd never realized how much contempt she had for me. She won't win, Chloe continued. The will is airtight. I made sure of that when I helped Mom revise it. By the time this is over, she'll give up and disappear like she always does. I backed away from the door and returned to my car. Chloe had no idea what she was up against. She'd underestimated me my entire life. She was about to learn that was a mistake. Building a legal case required allies, people who'd witnessed the family dynamics firsthand. I started reaching out to people Mom had known, friends and relatives who'd seen the favoritism. Aunt Claire was the first person I called. She was Mom's younger sister, someone who'd always been kind to me even when Mom wasn't. I was wondering when you'd call, she said when she answered. I heard about the will. Kaitlyn, I'm so sorry. Did you know Mom was planning this? Not specifically, but I wasn't surprised. Your mother always favored Chloe. I argued with her about it for years. She sighed. I have letters she wrote me, talking about how Chloe was her pride and joy. About how you were just different from what she'd hoped for. Would you be willing to provide those letters for my case? Absolutely. Your mother's favoritism was wrong, and this will is the final proof of it. I contacted others. Mom's longtime neighbor, who'd witnessed Chloe's rare visits versus my daily presence. Mom's home health aide, who'd noted in her records that primary caregiver daughter Kaitlyn managed all medical decisions. The pharmacist who'd filled prescriptions I'd picked up hundreds of times. Each person added another piece to the puzzle. Slowly, I was building evidence that Mom's final wishes didn't reflect reality, but rather a lifetime of unjust favoritism influenced by Chloe's manipulation. Harold called me into his office 6 weeks after I'd retained him. His expression was cautiously optimistic. I've reviewed everything, and I think we have a case. A good one, actually. Really? The combination of factors is compelling. You were the primary caregiver, documented extensively. Your sister was largely absent. The will was changed shortly after your sister arranged a private meeting with your mother and a new attorney. Financial records show systematic asset transfers that were hidden from family. And we have witnesses willing to testify about the favoritism and your sister's limited involvement in your mother's care. I leaned forward. What's the loophole? You said there might be one. Colorado law allows challenges to wills based on undue influence. If we can prove your sister manipulated your mother, especially given your mother's declining mental state after her stroke, we can argue the will doesn't reflect her true wishes. But Mom was competent when she changed it. Was she? Harold pulled out medical records. Look at the dates. The will was changed 3 weeks after a documented cognitive assessment showing early-stage dementia. Your sister somehow convinced a lawyer to proceed despite this diagnosis being in your mother's medical file. Hope surged through me for the first time in weeks. We can prove undue influence. We can try. And Kaitlyn. He met my eyes. This won't be easy. Your sister will fight dirty. Are you ready for that? I've been ready my whole life. Chloe's response to my lawsuit was swift and vicious. She hired an expensive legal team and immediately began a campaign to discredit me publicly. Local newspapers received anonymous tips about my instability and jealousy of my successful sister. Social media posts appeared questioning my motives and claiming I'd neglected Mom in her final months. None of it was true, but the damage spread quickly. Friends received messages warning them that I was going through something and to be careful around me. My employer received a complaint about my emotional state, affecting my work performance. Harold anticipated this. It's a classic defense strategy. Discredit the challenger, make them look unstable. Don't respond publicly. Let them overplay their hand. But staying silent was difficult when my reputation was being shredded. I watched former family friends distance themselves, believing Chloe's narrative without questioning it. Dad called once. You need to stop this, Kaitlyn. You're embarrassing the family. Chloe's lying about me. She's protecting herself. You're the one attacking your own sister over money. This isn't about money. It's about justice. It's about you being jealous. It always has been. He hung up. That night, I cried for the first time since Mom's death. Not from sadness, but from rage at the injustice of it all. The first small victory came 2 months into the legal battle. Harold filed a motion to freeze the sale of estate assets until the case was resolved. The judge, after reviewing evidence of Chloe's rapid liquidation of family property, agreed. The court finds sufficient cause to preserve estate assets pending resolution of the inheritance dispute, the judge ruled. Items already sold must be tracked and valued. No further sales may occur. I watched Chloe's face pale as the judge spoke. She'd been counting on converting everything to cash before my case gained traction. Now she was stuck. After the hearing, Chloe cornered me in the courthouse hallway. You're going to regret this. I already regret not standing up to you years ago. Mom left everything to me because she knew I deserved it. You were always the disappointment. Mom left everything to you because you manipulated her. But the truth is coming out. Her expression hardened. You can't prove anything. Watch me. The small win felt significant. Harold had been right, documentation and persistence were paying off. Chloe's confidence was beginning to crack, and I was just getting started. The family split became official at Thanksgiving. Aunt Claire hosted dinner, and for the first time in family history, not everyone was invited to the same gathering. Chloe, Dad, and their supporters gathered at Dad's house. Aunt Claire invited me and the relatives who'd questioned the will. The family was divided, and the rift felt permanent. I'm sorry it came to this, Aunt Claire said as we prepared the meal. But your mother's favoritism poisoned this family long before she died. Did you ever talk to her about it? Many times. She'd always say Chloe needed more support, that you were naturally capable and didn't need attention. I tried to make her see how unfair that was, but she never listened. Other relatives shared similar stories. How Mom had boasted about Chloe constantly while barely mentioning me. How she'd criticized my choices while praising identical choices Chloe made. How she'd made excuses for Chloe's absence while taking my presence for granted. You were always there, one cousin said. Every family event, every crisis, every difficult moment. You showed up. Chloe appeared for photos and left. Hearing others validate what I'd lived through was healing in unexpected ways. I'd spent so long thinking maybe I was the problem, maybe I'd somehow deserved the neglect. Now I understood it was never about me. It was about Mom's inability to see beyond her favorite child. The threatening message came 3 days after Thanksgiving. A text from an unknown number. Drop the lawsuit or face consequences. You don't want your secrets exposed. I showed it to Harold immediately. He documented it and filed a complaint about witness intimidation. The next threat was more specific. An email detailing my college relationship that had ended badly, claiming I'd been unstable even then. The email was sent to my employer, my friends, local reporters. Harold traced it back to an account linked to Chloe's husband. More evidence of their desperation. They're scared, Harold said. People don't threaten when they're confident in their position. But the threats escalated. A rumor spread that I'd stolen from Mom during her illness. An anonymous complaint was filed with social services claiming I'd abused her. Each accusation was investigated and dismissed, but the emotional toll was exhausting. Chloe called once. You could end this. Just drop the lawsuit and move on with your life. Why would I do that? Because if you don't, things will get worse. We have resources you don't. We can make your life very difficult. You mean you'll keep lying about me? I mean we'll do whatever it takes to protect what's rightfully ours. Her voice was cold. This is your last warning. I hung up and immediately forwarded the recording to Harold. Every threat was more evidence. The fake apology came via email 2 weeks before our scheduled court date. Chloe's message was long and seemingly heartfelt. Kaitlyn, I've been thinking about everything, and I realize I've handled this poorly. You're my sister, and family should come first. I'm sorry for how things have escalated. Maybe we can work something out privately, without courts and lawyers. I never wanted it to come to this. I read it twice, then called Harold. It's a manipulation tactic, he said immediately. They're worried about the court date. She wants you to drop the lawsuit. Should I respond? Absolutely not. Document it, but don't engage. This is exactly what we expected as we got closer to trial. Chloe called the next day when I didn't respond to her email. Did you get my message? I did. And? Can we talk about this like adults? We can talk in court. Kaitlyn, please. I'm trying to make peace here. I'm willing to give you some of Mom's personal items, some jewelry maybe. We don't need to keep fighting. You mean you're willing to give me scraps to avoid questions about how you manipulated Mom? That's not, I never manipulated her. She made her own choices. Then you'll have no problem explaining those choices to a judge. She hung up. The next email was less apologetic, accusing me of being vindictive and refusing to be reasonable. The mask had slipped again. The discovery that changed everything came from Harold's investigator. Buried in financial records was a trust fund I'd never known about, established by my grandmother years before her death. The trust was supposed to be split equally between Chloe and me upon Mom's death. The documents were clear, notarized, and legally binding. But somehow, Chloe had become the sole beneficiary. Harold's investigator traced the change. 3 years ago, Mom had modified the trust documents, removing my name and leaving everything to Chloe. The modification had been done by the same attorney Chloe had brought to visit Mom 8 months before her death. This is massive, Harold said, spreading the documents across his desk. Your grandmother specifically wanted both granddaughters to benefit equally. Your mother had no right to change those terms. Can we challenge it? We can do better than that. Trust law is very specific. If your grandmother set up an irrevocable trust for both beneficiaries, your mother couldn't unilaterally change it. These modifications are likely invalid. I stared at the papers, my mind racing. How much money are we talking about? The trust currently holds about $400,000 in investments and property. Split evenly, that's $200,000 each. Money Chloe thought was entirely hers. Money she'd been counting on. Money she'd stolen through fraudulent document modifications. We need to file immediately, Harold said. This completely changes the scope of the case. Chloe's desperation became evident as our court date approached. She started making increasingly reckless decisions to protect her assets. She sold property that was supposed to be frozen by court order, claiming she didn't understand the restrictions. She transferred money to offshore accounts, thinking it would be untraceable. She created a new LLC and moved assets into it, attempting to hide them from legal scrutiny. Harold's investigator documented everything. Each action Chloe took to hide money or violate court orders became evidence of her consciousness of guilt. She's panicking, Harold observed. Making amateur mistakes. Her lawyers must be going crazy trying to control her. Even Chloe's supporters started questioning her judgment. I heard through family gossip that Dad had argued with her about the offshore accounts, worried they made her look guilty. Chloe's carefully maintained image of the perfect, successful daughter was crumbling. People saw the calculated manipulator beneath the professional exterior. They saw someone willing to break laws and destroy family relationships for money. Her husband filed for separation, citing irreconcilable differences. Rumors spread that he was distancing himself from her legal troubles. Chloe's medical practice partners started proceedings to buy her out, uncomfortable with the negative publicity. Everything she'd built her identity around was falling apart. And she had no one to blame but herself. The family gathering where everything boiled over was Aunt Claire's birthday party. I'd been invited. Chloe surprisingly showed up anyway. We'd managed to avoid each other for most of the evening until Chloe had too much wine and decided to make a speech. I want everyone to know what my sister is really doing, she announced, her voice carrying across the room. She's not fighting for justice. She's trying to steal money she never earned. Mom left everything to me because she knew I deserved it. Kaitlyn's just bitter about being the lesser daughter her entire life. The room went silent. Aunt Claire started to intervene, but I held up my hand. You're right about one thing, I said calmly. I was the lesser daughter in Mom's eyes. But that was never about what I deserved. It was about what you manipulated her into believing. I never manipulated anyone. Then explain the secret bank accounts. Explain why you changed grandmother's trust documents without telling anyone. Explain why you paid for a lawyer to change Mom's will right after her dementia diagnosis. Chloe's face flushed. You can't prove any of that. Actually, I can. I have bank records, trust documents, medical records, witness statements. Everything you've done is documented. And in 2 days, you're going to have to explain all of it to a judge. Chloe threw her wine glass. It shattered against the wall, and she stormed out. Dad followed her, but not before giving me a look of pure anger. The party ended shortly after, but I didn't regret anything I'd said. The truth was out. The media attention started the day before our court hearing. Someone, probably someone from Aunt Claire's party, had leaked details of the case to local reporters. Inheritance battle reveals family secrets, read one headline. Another, doctor accused of manipulating dying mother. The stories detailed the hidden accounts, the modified trust, Chloe's asset concealment. They painted her as greedy and calculating, exactly what Harold and I had been documenting for months. Chloe's attempt to control the narrative had backfired spectacularly. Her earlier campaign to discredit me now looked like projection. Everything she'd accused me of, being unstable, money-hungry, vindictive, the evidence suggested described her perfectly. I gave one carefully prepared statement to reporters. I'm simply asking for the fair distribution my mother would have wanted if she hadn't been unduly influenced in her final months. The evidence will speak for itself. Short, factual, impossible to attack. Harold had coached me well. Chloe's response was less measured. She gave a rambling interview claiming she was the victim of a conspiracy, that I'd turned the family against her, that Mom had clearly stated her wishes. The interview made her look paranoid and desperate. The court of public opinion was turning, but the only court that mattered was the one we'd face tomorrow. The courtroom was packed when Harold and I arrived. Family members, reporters, even some of Mom's old friends had come to watch. The case had become public enough to draw attention. Chloe sat with her legal team, her expression defiant, but her hands fidgeting with a pen. Dad sat behind her, looking older and more tired than I'd ever seen him. The judge, Honorable Patricia Reeves, reviewed the case file before addressing both parties. This is an estate dispute involving allegations of undue influence and trust fund modification. Let's proceed. Harold presented our evidence methodically. The financial records showing secret accounts. The timeline of the will change correlating with Mom's cognitive decline. The modified trust documents that violated my grandmother's clear intentions. Witness testimony about Chloe's minimal involvement in Mom's care. Chloe's attorney tried to counter, arguing that Mom had been competent to make her own decisions, that the accounts were simply good financial planning, that the trust modifications were legitimate. But Harold had saved the strongest evidence for last. He presented recordings of conversations where Chloe had admitted to helping Mom revise her will, emails discussing how to structure accounts to avoid scrutiny, and testimony from the attorney who'd witnessed the trust modifications about how Chloe had pressured Mom to sign documents she didn't fully understand. Chloe's carefully constructed defense fell apart under the weight of documentation. Dad took the stand, called by Chloe's attorneys to defend her. But under cross-examination from Harold, the truth emerged about his role in the family dynamics. You were aware of your late wife's favoritism toward Chloe? Harold asked. She loved both daughters, Dad said unconvincingly. But she treated them differently, didn't she? Chloe had higher achievements. That's just reality. So you believe unequal treatment was justified based on your personal assessment of your daughter's worth? Dad's face flushed. That's not what I said. But you did nothing to address the favoritism. You allowed your wife to exclude Kaitlyn from family decisions, from the will, from the trust fund. You enabled this behavior. I didn't enable anything. Harold pulled out letters Dad had written to Mom over the years, ones we'd subpoenaed. Letters where he'd agreed with Mom's assessments of me as needing less support and Chloe as the family's future. You were complicit in creating an environment where one daughter received everything and the other received nothing. And when Kaitlyn challenged this injustice, you called her behavior embarrassing. Dad had no response. He left the stand looking diminished, the facade of the impartial parent shattered. The courtroom had seen him clearly, a weak man who'd allowed his wife to destroy one daughter while elevating another, then blamed the victim for fighting back. The final day of the trial was emotionally exhausting. Both sides presented closing arguments, summarizing weeks of testimony and mountains of evidence. Chloe's attorney painted her as a successful daughter who'd earned her mother's favor through achievement and dedication. He argued that my caregiving had been my choice, not something that earned me inheritance rights. But Harold's closing was devastating. He walked the judge through a clear pattern of manipulation, undue influence, and fraudulent document modification. He showed how Chloe had systematically positioned herself to inherit everything while I'd been deceived about the true state of affairs. Your Honor, this case is about whether we allow the strong to prey on the weak, whether we permit family members to manipulate dying relatives for financial gain. Kaitlyn Patterson devoted years to caring for her mother, while Chloe Patterson devoted years to ensuring she'd inherit everything. The evidence is overwhelming. Judge Reeves took a brief recess, then returned with her decision. I've reviewed all evidence and testimony carefully. This case involves serious allegations that go to the heart of family trust and legal obligations. My heart pounded as she continued. I find that the decedent was subjected to undue influence in modifying her will. I find that the trust fund modifications were improperly executed and violated the grantor's original intentions. I find that the distribution of the estate as written does not reflect the decedent's true wishes, but rather the manipulation of a vulnerable person by someone in a position of trust. Judge Reeves's ruling was comprehensive and unambiguous. I hereby order the following. The will dated 8 months prior to the decedent's death is set aside. The previous will, distributing the estate equally between both daughters, is reinstated. The trust fund modifications are declared invalid. All trust assets shall be distributed equally as originally intended. All estate assets shall be divided equally between Kaitlyn Patterson and Chloe Patterson. The courtroom erupted. Chloe's face went white as her attorney scrambled to object. But the judge continued. Furthermore, I'm ordering a full accounting of all estate assets, including those already sold or transferred. Chloe Patterson will be held responsible for any assets improperly liquidated or concealed. The court finds evidence of deliberate asset hiding and possible fraud, which will be referred to appropriate authorities for investigation. I sat frozen, unable to process what I was hearing. I'd won. Not just partially, but completely. Everything Chloe had stolen was being returned, and she was facing potential criminal investigation. Harold squeezed my shoulder. You did it. Chloe turned to look at me, her expression a mixture of shock and rage. For the first time in our lives, she'd faced consequences for her actions. The golden child had fallen. Dad sat with his head in his hands, the family he'd helped destroy crumbling around him. I felt no satisfaction in his pain, only sadness for what might have been if he'd been a better father to both daughters. The weeks following the verdict were chaotic. Chloe's attorneys filed appeals that were quickly dismissed. She tried to negotiate a private settlement, offering to give me slightly more than half if I'd help her avoid the fraud investigation. I refused. Not out of vindictiveness, but because justice required consequences. What she'd done wasn't just unfair, it was criminal. And she needed to face that reality. The fraud investigation moved forward. Prosecutors found evidence of document forgery, financial manipulation, and elder abuse. Chloe eventually accepted a plea deal, probation, community service, and restitution for legal costs. Her medical license was suspended pending ethics review. Dad called once, his voice broken. I hope you're happy. You've destroyed your sister. I didn't destroy Chloe. She destroyed herself. I just stopped letting her destroy me too. She's lost everything. Her reputation, her career, her marriage. She had those things built on lies and stolen money. They were never really hers. You could have been the bigger person. Let it go. No, Dad. For once in my life, I chose myself over making things easy for Chloe. And it's the best decision I ever made. He hung up. We haven't spoken since. 2 years after the verdict, I stood in the doorway of the family home, my home now. Chloe and I had agreed to let me buy out her half of the house, unable to co-own anything peacefully. I'd renovated carefully, honoring Mom's memory while making the space my own. The antique furniture I'd recovered from sales. New paint and updates that reflected my taste. A home office where I'd rebuilt my career. A garden where I'd planted flowers Mom had loved. The inheritance had given me financial security, but more importantly, it had given me validation. Years of being overlooked and undervalued had been officially acknowledged as wrong. My worth had been legally recognized. Chloe sent a letter on the anniversary of the verdict. Not an apology exactly, but an acknowledgement. I understand now that I was wrong. Mom's favoritism damaged us both, me by making me believe I deserved special treatment, you by making you believe you deserved nothing. I'm sorry for my part in continuing that pattern. It wasn't enough for reconciliation, but it was something. Growth, maybe. Understanding, finally. I'd learned that justice doesn't always look like revenge. Sometimes it looks like standing up for yourself when everyone tells you to back down. Like demanding fairness when others call you vindictive. Like refusing to accept scraps when you deserve a full.